Welcome, everybody, into the Valley. I am Ethan Shutt, joined as always by my brother Ryan and our best friend Philip Russell. Gentlemen, I would like to apologize to you all and our listeners for the 1 week hiatus that we took. That said, my wife and I appreciate you and your patience very much. How have you guys been?
Hey, living the dream, baby. Living the dream. You and your wife were gone for a week. Life was great.
Thank you.
I'm good. I'm high right now because the room I'm in just got painted, so we're just vibing.
All right. Well, I'll have to check and
There's
see if
TOS.
I've got to see if I have to mark this as explicit now on YouTube and all the podcast platforms, as our host is openly admitting to being high off of paint fumes. That said, Philip, I hope the new house is treating you well. A lot of changes going on for us. Again, I think I was telling someone today, I think it was my boss, that was my first time having a week off of work in a long time. So it was nice. It was nice. I hated missing out on the podcast, but life is good. So again, to those that are listening, thank you for your patience. Also, maybe this is the first time you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, you're watching. We just want to say thank you. We hope you enjoy our discussion today. Obviously, if you're new here and you have not subscribed on YouTube or followed us on one of the podcast platforms, we would love for you to do that. We do our best to engage with anyone that comments on any of our comments or on our content, except when people decide to somehow say that Jalen Brunson is better than Luka Doncic in one of our YouTube comments. We typically just ignore those people and continue on with our lives.
I've actually been sleeping on that one for a few weeks now, and the more I've pondered it, to Ethan's point, there's a really good chance that a lot of us folks who have been doing Suns pods and things like that are going to get some more eyes on us just with the playoffs coming. And if you're here just because you're interested by the bright future Suns, who all of a sudden went from being trashed to potentially a 1 seed, welcome. This is not a gatekeeping community. We are a community that is glad to have people in our corner and supporting us and enjoying the ride. So we are glad you were with us for sure.
And if you're not a Suns fan, don't feel too out of place. One of our lovely co-hosts, Philip, is also not a Suns fan. He is a proud Bulls fan, but
proud.
I'm sorry. Are there no such thing as proud Bull fans?
Not right now. We're making win now moves, baby, and then we drop like 15 games out of 20. I don't want to talk about it. Let's talk about the Suns.
Fair enough. Well, hey, what a beautiful, smooth transition to a Suns podcast. Let's talk about the Suns. We were taking the time to, I don't know, I guess it worked for two reasons. One, with the week break, it allowed us to kind of change our normal pace of, hey, recap what we missed from last episode. Push on now. Let's summarize. There's no way we're going to summarize quickly 2 weeks worth of games. So just for context, for those listening that maybe haven't been keeping up, right now the Suns are 46-18, which is bananas.
And look at the streak of games we're about to play. We have got some winnable games coming up. 50 games is very likely.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it is pretty easy to summarize the last 2 weeks. Like, the Suns keep winning basketball games and they don't lose very often. Like, that's kind of it.
We were going into that tail end, or I guess probably mid-April stretch, where that gauntlet looked rough. And sure, you drop a game or two, but that's to be expected even when you're not playing the elites of the East and then the West. The fact that they gained ground on the Jazz through that stretch is incredible. So right now, the Suns and Jazz both are 46-18. The Suns do own the tiebreaker. And right now, the West is kind of divided into a few chunks of teams competing. So right at the top right now, you have Suns and Jazz, both 46-18, kind of going back and forth for that 1 and 2 seed, which, to be honest with you, that 2 seed may end up being the sweet spot if the things keep shaking out and the LAs are playing at 4 and 5. But the next chunk, we have the Nuggets and Clippers, both half a game apart. Nuggets are 43-21, have won 9 of their last 10. And this is all after Jamal Murray goes out for the season. absolutely absurd. We went back and talked about potential playoff matchups. And even when Murray was healthy, I wasn't that terrified of the Nuggets, but boy, I'm terrified now because they are looking good. The Clippers, who have always terrified me, are a half game back there at 43-22. And then things get juicy, boy. The 5 seed Dallas Mavericks 36-28. The Lakers are the 6 seed 36-28.
Whoever made the playoffs should be fired.
And then 7, 8, 9, 10 right now. And look, something could change. The Pelicans could go on some sort of run, crack into the 10 seed. They're 2.5 games back of the Spurs. I don't see it happening. So right now, 7 through 10, you have the Blazers at 7, 3.5 games behind them are the Grizzlies at 8. And then the Warriors are half a game back from them, and the Spurs are a half a game back from them. Who knows what that's going to look like? But if you are looking at the standings on any traditional website, you will see a tiny little X next to the Phoenix Suns, indicating that they have clinched a playoff berth. I understand the social media team and whatnot for the Suns had to be excited when they're like, they've clinched a spot in at least the play-in tournament. And I was like, I'm not going to celebrate about that. Like, give me the real thing. And we finally are there. No matter what, Suns are in the playoffs. I am a happy boy. And we've kind of joked for so long. It's like, hey, what do you talk about when your team's good? Well, you talk about, are we going to make the playoffs? And I think that was like 2 months ago. We had a video like, too early to talk playoffs. Answer was definitely no, because everything's gone pretty according to plan since then. And we now are in the spot where obviously 1 seed versus 2 seed is kind of up in the air. We'll see how it plays out. I really think just the way the West is shaping, the 2 seed might be the easier path, but who knows? But we are now officially looking towards the playoffs. Philip, as a Bulls fan, can you tell me a little bit about cheering for a team in the playoffs? I know it's been a while for us. It's been 10 years. I'm guessing the Bulls have been sometime recently, right? Because they're, a historical franchise of success and winning, right?
Some of my more formidable years were the Luol Deng, Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah. That was the core for the Bulls. Pacers and Heat. They could give the Heat some runs. I mean, the Eastern Conference was tough back then, just some hard-nosed basketball. So it is anxiety-inducing because every game obviously matters so much in a 7-game series. But then in the playoffs, the big thing that switches is it feels like the importance of every possession goes up and goes up significantly. And there are a couple reasons for that. One, the stakes are naturally higher in the playoffs, but 2, the pace of play is always slower in the playoffs. So there is just statistically an increased value on every possession. And as a fan, you'll just kind of naturally feel that over the course of a game and over the course of a playoff series.
I guess I know at this point, poor Ryan, which life is better now. Ryan became a Suns fan because of me. So he wasn't even a Suns fan back when they were in the playoff last. I was 14, 15.
I have never known a good Suns team in my time following the Suns. Yeah. I have never known a good Suns team, full stop. I mean, let's be honest.
I remember crying watching Suns teams lose in the playoffs. I remember nights when I couldn't stay up late when I was even younger, like early 7 seconds or less, recording it on the VCR I had in my bedroom and watching them, waking up early the next morning. So I didn't quite break my parents' rules of bedtime, but I would wake up early to watch the game. And so it's crazy how different my life is from the last time the Suns were in the playoffs. But it's so exciting. The fan base deserves this. The team deserves this. Devin Booker, more than probably anyone, deserves this. And so we want to do a little, I'm not going to call it a series. I'm just going to call it a little 2-parter. But it was a great kind of conversation that Philip brought up to us of saying, hey, look, they're in the playoffs now. Now that you're here, what's that going to look like? And we've had conversations throughout this entire season of, all right, the rotation changes. Okay, the backup point guard changes. Okay, the guard rotation changes. Who's getting minutes, who's not. And I feel like maybe not as much as I thought, and you guys can kind of give me your thoughts. I feel like Monty has at least figured out his dudes now to some extent. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, I think we have the luxury, and we've talked about this before, of being so deep. But I think at this point, there's a pretty clear picture of who the starting 5-player rotation is going to be, and then probably who the next 3 off the bench will be. Right there, you've got an 8-person rotation going, and yeah, I think we've seen enough of Monty tweaking and adjusting to know at least what to expect. On a typical night. Now that doesn't mean there won't be nights where maybe he spices that up a little bit, but I think we're pretty familiar with what's coming here in just a couple weeks for sure.
Yeah, and the last few weeks have given you a good indication of Monty's approach too. So Frank Kaminsky's not playing a ton over the course of the last, 3 months of the season, but he's gotten increased run the last few weeks because Jay Crowder's been out. So that kind of messes with the initial rotation. So then you're even seeing things like Frank and Dario in. But when you take a look at that kind of big picture, you can see coming off the bench, it's going to be Cam Payne, Torrey Craig, Dario Saric, Cam Johnson. Those are going to be your main guys coming off the bench. And then the luxury for the Suns is that they can also add Javon Carter coming off the bench as well. And his shot has been really good.
For about 2.5 weeks now. Yeah, he's been, I mean, we know he's good. He got an extension this summer coming in, but he has looked like the Javon Carter who can come in, give you valuable playoff minutes when needed, and not be a step back, which I think is really great to have in your back pocket.
Not a liability on offense, which is always the question, because defensively, he's going to get it done. But yeah, as the picture kind of got clear, we wanted to, and like I said, we're going to break this up into 2 episodes, and hopefully you'll hop in with us next week when we do this. But we want to talk about what is going to make or break the Suns in the playoffs. And the general idea here is we're going to look, and like I said, we're going to split it up. We're going to do the starters today, assuming everyone's healthy. So we're going to go ahead and include Jay Crowder here. But looking player by player at what could make the Suns playoffs because of them, or what could break the Suns in the playoffs because of them. And so I want to start with the guy who's had the most experience, the guy who is leading the charge, the one and only Chris Paul. And it was fun and also embarrassing and sad at the same time looking through the roster and what they've done in the playoffs in the past, because it's jarring to see how many players on this team haven't played in the playoffs in the past. But you look at Chris Paul, and Chris Paul, first playoffs back in 2008. So the guy's been doing this for a while. He was in the playoffs in 2008, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and now 21. That is incredible. Like that's the other thing too. He's moved around. I don't think there was probably, and I guess you could interpret this different ways. I would probably say last year was his most impressive team to take to the playoffs, just in terms of what the projection was, as basically no one really gave him a shot. And what they did, not only getting to the playoffs, but taking the Rockets to 7. He's coming off of that, which is honestly kind of nice. It wasn't a, hey, we're going to the Western Conference Finals, let's put an extra 16 games on old Chris Paul's legs. He's coming in, not like it's been a long time since he's been there, but a completely different situation. So Philip, kind of taking us from the start here, Chris Paul, what can make it for the Suns, and then what can break them as well?
I think it's really simple for CP3. It's stay on the court. And there are a couple different lanes in which that's applicable. One is obviously stay out of foul trouble. Don't get caught with any ticky-tack fouls. CP3 has a tendency to play very physically in the postseason, and he'll need to be cognizant of the reps. You can think about like old school series that he's had against guys like Steph Curry, and he wants to play very physically, but he's got to be on the court. And then the other thing that really derailed his best chance at a ring was a playoff injury. So he's going to need to I would hope he stays within his normal rotation as much as possible, plays, about 6 minutes in the first quarter, come back right at the tail end, play into the second. I hope he does that and has a manageable workload and then can be hyper efficient within that workload. Because we've seen with this guy on the court, the game is more complex for the other team, yet it can be simpler for his teammates because he's going to be putting them in positions to succeed. And that's going to be key in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I just had it pulled up here. It's incredible that this season, where it feels like he's always on the court or close to it, is tied for his lowest minutes per game at 31.5. The only other times it's been that low, last year in OKC, and then back in 2016 with the Clippers, only played 60 some odd games that year. Him at his most, obviously, earlier in his career, even once with the Clippers, 36, 37, 38 a game. Obviously, he's not a dude that's going to want to come off the court at all. Some stars could be resting with the next however many games. We have 7 or 8 games left. I don't think we're going to see that. I wouldn't be shocked to see if Monty tries to pump the brakes at all. But yeah, Philip, my thing is he just needs to be there, whether that's health, whether that's foul trouble, whether that's whatever. There's not going to be a matchup that forces him off the court ever. So he is in complete control of what he can do offensively, defensively, not going to be a liability. The health concern, I don't know if that, because that was the first thing in my mind too. Health was the first thing. And I think it's just reliving that Rockets injury over and over and over because of how much it impacted the entire dynamic of the NBA, because what could have been if the Rockets knock off the Warriors there. But if you're just looking at this season, health has not been a concern.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock on wood here. Health hasn't been a concern for the Suns literally until like the last 2 weeks, which does scare me slightly. We'll touch on that later. But Ryan, thinking about Chris Paul, I know we probably hit some of the stuff you were going to talk about, but what do you think is either going to make or break him with Chris Paul?
Make is just that leadership and poise and expertise and experience he's going to bring both on and off the court. Yeah, we want him to be on the court as much as possible, but I think even off the court, he's as big of a voice as Monty is in the heads of the players, coaching them up, preparing them for something that most of them haven't experienced, say for Jay Crowder getting really valuable playoff minutes. So I think he just brings a lot of that to the table, and that's going to go a long way, I think, with our guys. As for break, it not so much injury, but will he run out of gas? I know his usage hasn't been as much with those lower minutes per game, but he is not a young man anymore. And we've seen even the way LeBron has handled this season, we're seeing him be injured more than he usually is in years past. And you're seeing your heroes become fallible for once. And so I just hope, Chris Paul has enough in the tank to make it through a long season, because we could still have several more weeks to go.
Yeah. And just one more point on that. Just got the numbers pulled up here in front of me. And I knew it would be a pretty stark contrast, but didn't realize how clear it was. If you're looking, again, we talked about his season average minute per game at 31.5, but these are the minutes he played in the 7 games against the Rockets with the Thunder last year: 37, 36, 40, 37, 29, but I'm pretty sure that's where they got blown out. They lost by 34. He was able to rest, and then 39, 39. So you're looking at, let's just say, rough average 38 a game, what he'll be playing. An extra 7 minutes a game, that's a 20% increase from what he's doing right now. So that is why I think we have some validity in our concern. Obviously, I think that's just going to be how to manage everything well, and hopefully Monty can do that. We've talked about players who haven't been to the playoffs. Monty has not led a team in the playoffs or really been super involved in a bit in terms of these rotational decisions. So that'll be interesting too. I know we're not going to have a Monty section or whole episode about him in the playoffs here, but definitely interesting. Now looking at the official 1A, 1B, depending on who you're talking about, Devin Booker is finally in the playoffs. I think that is the story of the season. I think it would be the story even if the Suns were the 3 seed or 4 seed. If they pull out a 1 seed, incredible, great, 2 seed, whatever. Booker being in the playoffs is huge. Just from the amount of work he's put in, the amount of awful teams he's been a part of, without the loud trade demands, without the, I would just say, potential paths he could have gone down. It's great to see him rewarded with a team like this, and not just a team that's going to squeak into the 8 seed, a team that's got a shot. And for me, for Book, I think the thing that's, on the make and break side of things, it is as silly as this. It's what are we going to see from him I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I need to see his mentality and his mental toughness, because the one thing that concerns me with Book is the dumb technical fouls, the out of his rhythm yelling at the refs, the I'm getting hacked, whatever. And he's younger than me, right? So it's not like I'm talking about a 40-year-old man that we've seen a whole career. Like, he's still young, but that is when we're watching regular season games that get intense. I'm really curious to see if he has the Mamba mentality, killer instinct, where he's just like, this is business, I'm here to get stuff done. Or if he could unfortunately go the path of the, I need to be the hero, I'm finally in the playoffs. And I think however he goes about that is going to either make or break him. Because offensively, we know what he is. He's a great scorer, 3-level scorer. He's efficient as crap. I don't think that's just going to disappear. You don't see that happen. There's the Paul Georges of the world who sure can have some weird enigmas of what's going on with you type thing. But I don't foresee Booker's playing to be what could be the concern. I could see it being what's up here. And hopefully that came across the right way. I don't think he's an immature diva type player that I know there's a lot of players that are that way. So Philip, I'll let you address if my comment made sense and came across the right way for those listening. And then I'll let you take over as well with yours.
Yeah, it's obvious if you watch Suns games routinely that Devin can get in his head, and Monty's even pulled him from a couple games. I think there was a game a week and a half ago or so where Devin picked up his second foul late in the second, but he was whining a lot to the refs, and Monty yanked him out of the game, sat him for the rest of the half. And then in the post-game interview, Monty said, Devin, basically paraphrasing, Devin was getting emotional and I didn't want him to have 3 before halftime. So he sat him down with 2 and then brought him back in the second half. So it's something I think the Suns are cognizant of. But along with that, the break for me for Booker would be low efficiency and high volume. And that's if he's not scoring near where he's scoring in the regular season or shooting a percentage close to where he is in the regular season, that can be a problem in the playoffs, primarily because of his shot selection. He's a mid-range and in player primarily, and that means his efficiency needs to stay high because his shots aren't in and of themselves the most efficient shots on the court. But what will make is Devin, D-Book, Booker, whatever he wants to be called.
Oh, I forgot. I can't call him Devin anymore.
Yeah, you can't call him Devin. Becoming his best playmaking self. And I'm wording that very intentionally. His playmaking self, not just getting to his spots and scoring, but also playmaking for other people. Watching pretty much every Suns game this year, one of the things that I pick up on, and I've talked to you guys, and I think I've mentioned it on the pod before, every now and then it looks like his decision-making is about half a second late. Mm-hmm. Like there are open passes to make, and there's like a half a beat where he could have made the pass to an open player, especially on the opposite wing or in a corner when he's driving. And he hesitates, or he's primarily looking to score. And I think in the playoffs, if the Suns are to make a deep run, he has to be a decisive playmaker and not just a decisive scorer.
Yeah, for me, my make was, Ethan, you already touched on that Mamba mentality, but my note, I had Mamba Book. This is Devin Booker's first time to show he's that kid who has modeled his game after Kobe, who Kobe looked at him and told him to be legendary, and he's now written it on his shoes every game. You know what I mean? This is Devin's chance to prove that that's who he is as a player. but it's a two-edged sword, and that's what my break is, the fact that he could try too hard to push that. And we've seen him have several games this season where he goes for 6 or 7 turnovers, and a lot of that is him forcing things or getting frustrated. If he's trying too hard to be who people expect him to be, it could derail his whole game and thus derail the rest of the game plan. So I want him to go for that and be that player, but I don't want him to force it. He's got it naturally. He needs to let it come to him naturally.
Yeah, that was the one stat I wrote down, actually, was the assist to turnover ratio. I think that's going to be a really key one to watch in the playoffs when, to your point, Philip, every possession means just that much more, and you can't be wasteful with it. I'll also be interested to see the shift in dynamic with Book and CP3 now that it is playoff time. One thing that a lot of people can forget is that Chris Paul, if he wanted to, could drop 25 to 30. He doesn't, because offensively, he's getting everyone else involved. But when a bucket is needed, he gets it. And so just looking back, and again, this was when he was more the primary guy in OKC, 19 points, 28 points, 16, 26, 26, the rough one at 14, or again, they got beat pretty bad, and then 20. And you look through his past seasons, his points per game in Houston were all lower. His assists were higher. But when you look at some of those New Orleans teams or whatever, even in LA sometimes, he could turn it on when it's needed. So my hope is if we do have those games where Book isn't as efficient as needed, we have that escape option, if you will, to where Chris Paul can step in and pick up there. And hopefully it allows Booker to focus more on the playmaking, the facilitating, and the defensive side as well, which I think everyone would be concerned about, but he's really kind of shut up most of the haters out there in terms of his defensive effort. And I guarantee you in the playoffs, there will be zero concerns about that.
Yeah, but to that point, to add on top of it a little bit, Booker, Paul, Bridges, they all seem to have this really great understanding of when to be the playmaker and when to act like a finisher. Especially this past week, I noticed when Devin or CP3 went off the court, Mikhail's aggression turned up a notch because now he's one of the better playmakers out on the court. So I think that tiered system is really helpful to have, knowing for Devin and CP3, do I need to force the issue right here, or can I swing it to another very capable playmaker?
Yep. No, 100%. And I think those two dictate more time in this discussion because I think that their involvement in usage is going to be significantly higher. But we look to two players that also haven't played in the playoffs before. We've got Mikal Bridges and we've got DeAndre Ayton. Two guys, same draft class, same amount of experience in the league. Going a little quicker here with Mikal, because I think, to me personally, that this one's a little bit more open and shut case in terms of his make is going to be if we see the same aggressive score that we've seen. I mean, the last week or two? I mean, he's pulled stuff out of the bag that I hadn't seen before, step back threes and everything. He's just one of those guys that you can count on. And so I don't have a big question mark over any part of his game. I would not be surprised come playoff time if we're saying right now his attention or time or effort is like 40-60 offensive defense, if it looks more like 20-80. And we saw that in the bubble too, where they had to win every game to have a chance of the playoffs. I mean, his one job was shut down blank, Luka, Kawhi, whoever. And so for me, his defense is going to make it for the Suns because that is what he is there to do. I can't even say his break could be falling apart on defense. I just don't see that as a possibility. So for me, it would be missing the open shots that he needs to make. He's going to get those handful of corner threes or whatever that he needs to hit and needs to deliver. And so I think if he takes care of business there, he's going to be fine. Philip, what about your boy Mikal?
The break is related to the defense, I think, and it would just be foul trouble because he's going to have a difficult task every night.
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's a higher likelihood that he could fall into foul trouble, but if he doesn't, the make I wrote down was don't forget about Dre. I think Mikal he plays a different position, but he falls in the same vein as a Draymond Green, where he has playmaking ability, but he fits so well within the offense and he plays his role so well within the offense that's what currently makes him such a dynamic player on the offensive end. And then he gets the credit that he deserves on the defensive end. So you're looking for that kind of consistent playmaking on offense and defense from Mikal.
For me, when it comes to the makes, I just want to see on the games where he can focus on offense. I want to see him attack the rim early, and I want to see him get some shots up early. And that ties into my break, which I don't want to see passive offensive Mikal. Yeah. I want to see him assert his offensive game, because sometimes he lets the game come to him instead of kind of being more pronounced in the offense. And I'd really like to see that. And then foul trouble, as Philip has stated, has gotten him into trouble several times this season.
No, I totally agree with that one. I think as long as he can stay on the court, he's going to be able to do what they need him to do. So if he can get that done, I think they're in a good spot. And then going to someone who has plenty of experience on the court in big playoff games after last season, we have Jay Crowder coming off his NBA Finals appearance, where he was playing mid-30s minutes too. I mean, he was a vital part of that team. Honestly, doing very similar to what we're thinking Mikal will do for the Suns this year, where he was the throw him on Giannis, throw him on LeBron, throw him on whoever. Jay, in the entirety of the last year's playoffs, I mean, he was scoring right around 10 points a game, hitting those threes, his 3-point percentage. It just seemed like his confidence level was through the roof. I guess that's just him as a player, though. Let's be real. That guy never looked scared to shoot. For me, with Jay Crowder, I think as long as he is playing his style of defense, he's going to be fine. And it's near identical. Mikal, hit your open shots. Hit the shots that come to you. You're not going to see Crowder take it off the bounce. You're not going to see him cut. He's not a big slasher. He's going to hit the threes. If he's hitting his threes, and my determination for hitting the threes is 40% or better. If you can go 40% or better in the playoffs in whatever your shots look like, you're going to be a huge asset to the team. Because defensively, once again, that guy's bringing it.
Yeah, there's probably a sliding scale with Jay with his 3-point shooting. So he's 38% on the year, and you put the good somewhere between 37, 38, 39%. And you're talking great if he's shooting over 40% generally in the playoffs. But if he dips below 35, 34%, that's when his offense is likely going to be in that negative for the Suns. So I think Jay's really just comes down to how well is he shooting threes.
Yeah.
For me, he's just a big energy guy. I think we saw that a lot in Miami. He just brings a toughness and an energy to the team that I think is going to be valuable, especially with the young guys. But, man, he can be streaky shooting. And that, to me, was my concern as well. Just we can't avoid those ice-cold nights.
Well, and you saw that last year in the playoffs, too. He has games where he goes 5 of 11, 6 of 12, 4 of 9, 5 of 9, and then follows it up with 2 of 10, 1 of 7 from 3.
Yeah.
The thing I love, though, is the confidence doesn't go away even when the shot's not falling, and you need that because when you're playing with dudes who have never been in the playoffs, think about rotations where Cam Johnson might be out there, Javon or Cam. You need someone who's got the confidence to take the right shot even if it's not falling. And then we go to what may be the biggest question mark.
Big boy.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because
Dario Saric. No,
every regular season game we have some of these question marks. Looking at the playoffs, I think the way that DeAndre will make it is if he defensively does what he needs to do. I think for playoffs, like that playoff DeAndre just needs to be a horrible person to compare to right now. A Rudy Gobert light. You are the defensive anchor. Keep your head in the game. Don't tire yourself out on offense. We need you defending the paint because in the playoffs with that slower, more methodical pace, you're going to be grinding down low a lot. And DA has to stay on the floor, which that's more foul trouble than anything. Stay on the floor because if you get in foul trouble, which honestly, that's probably the biggest break. If you're getting foul trouble and you're off the floor, we're screwed. Sorry, Frank. But looking at the teams out west, there's no one on the team that I would trust to guard Jokic or even Gobert at times, and definitely not Anthony Davis. So you have to stay out there, which means being smart on defense, knowing when to go for the big play, knowing when to just be in the right position. And then offensively, just like don't miss your layups. I don't think you need to shoot further than 2 feet from the hoop, to be honest with you. Just stay put, do your job right, and don't be a liability. Whatever that ends up meaning, just don't be a liability. And that seems like I have no faith in him. That is probably because I have very little faith in him, but I really hope he proves me wrong.
Go ahead.
I think his make is 15 and 10, which is pretty much what he's averaging right now. Do what you're averaging now, and it'll be great. But in order to do that, to your point, it's a matter of foul trouble. And I think where the biggest negative from him getting in foul trouble is the second line defense, where DA's been so good getting vertical, which is just something that Frank and Dario, God love them, can't do. No. They can't get vertical like DA.
I'm of the opinion that we will go as far as DeAndre Ayton takes us. And just because he's so important and we're so shallow where he is. He has preached this bully season mentality since he got to Phoenix. He gets a chance to prove it. And this is a time where it's got to meet the rubber meets the road. And we'll see if he's got it in him to be that bully down low.
We'll see if he's dominate.
And to your point, foul trouble or injury, either one of those is going to be a disaster for us just because we are so shallow with those guys behind him, except for Torrey Craig. Love you so much.
Yeah. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, hopefully you'll catch us next week. We're going to pick this up right where we're leaving off, talking about the bench unit, how they can make or break it, going through kind of the 5 guys that we think will be getting those minutes off the bench. But again, for Philip and Ryan, I'm Ethan Shutt. This has been another episode of Into the Valley.
We out.